using the same videos we've used in the past, working with the MyFirst MVC application. You should have already completed the creation of the database and now the modification of the web config file. Let's start working with the models for that database. So we've already got our project open. We're going to go to our Solution Explorer and we're going to scroll up to our models, and let's add a new model. Right mouse click, add, and remember that a model is simply a class. So right mouse click on models, add, new class, and we'll choose the new class, and let's call this student majors. Now, what's a model used for? A model is used for any representation of the data you're going to work with in your system. If you're working with a table out of the database, you'd create a model, or if you want to make a view of a certain grouping of data, you'll create a model, because the database or the system has to have some place to store the data up in memory. Now that we have our model created, let's just go ahead and start adding all the values. So here's my model for student majors. I typed in the word key, which by default, if you don't specify a key, MVC will create one for you. And what it does is it looks through the list of all the attributes in that model until it finds something with the word ID in it. And so it would have just made this one the primary key, but I like to do that myself. It's a little more structured. Notice I have a red line under the word key. That means you need to resolve it. So right mouse click, resolve, and that error will go away. Now, why couldn't we come in and say something like, this is the table for student? Well, this doesn't represent the table structure for student. All of this represents the table structure for student, but I threw in another column. That's not in that table. So this does not match the exact structure, so we can't specify a table there. This is actually going to hold data from a SQL query that's going to have an inner join. Go ahead and save that model, and let's make one more model for the major table. I'll let you do it, but remember, you're going to right mouse click model, add a new class, and then you're going to type in the data. Right mouse, add, class, and this one is going to be called majors. And this one actually does refer to a table, so we could actually make the link or set the attribute table majors, and then we'll specify the key. And once again, remember that little shortcut I just did. I type in the word prop tab tab. prop tab tab. Type in the data, tab tab. Type in the column name. Enter. And then you just resolve the errors that you see. Now, if you can't resolve an error, then you probably have a typo instead. Okay, and there's our model for the majors. I'm going to create one more model, and I'm going to map that to the student table. Right mouse click, model, add, class, and we're just going to call this model student. I'm going to do it plural, students. Actually, let's just do student.cs, non-plural. Click add. And we're going to map this to a database table as an attribute. And we'll specify the key. And then I'm just going to come over to my other model, student majors, and grab everything out of there that's not, or that is part of that student table, and come back over here, paste it in, and then resolve any errors that I might have. And then save that. I'm going to go ahead and build it, make sure everything works, which it does. So I now have my models in place. However, one thing I want to do is I'm going to come back into this table and I'm going to specify other attributes. I'm going to say that when you start working with this table, if you ever have data in there, you actually have to make it required. Now I could put an attribute on this field, student ID. However, if you remember, that column in the database is actually an identity field. So you don't have to worry about letting the user enter that data in. In fact, you don't want the user to enter that in. On these other columns, though, we could specify an attribute called required. And we could say it's required, and if they don't type it in, then we are going to display an error message, and you'll see how this shows up a little bit later. And let's do that for each of these other fields. I'll go back and change the description. Remember that the GPA is not required, so let's leave it off of that. And we did say that major ID was required. I'll clean this up a little bit more, and then I come in and change the error messages. Make it look a little bit nicer. And now we have attributes set up for our columns saying that when we start entering data, if they don't enter that data, then we're going to display an error message. Now remember, this goes hand in hand with the table that you created, and you said that certain columns could not be null. Once you have that table set up, let's go ahead and save that, and let's build again. I like to build just to make sure everything looks okay. And that's how we make our models.